Looking out a dirty old window, down below the cars in the city go rushing by. I sit here alone and I wonder why. Friday night and everyone's moving. I can feel the heat, but it's soothing.
All right, welcome to Growing Up in America on KPFT Pacifica Radio. It's Dr. Bob along with Bree Derry. Bree, how are you doing this morning?
So good. I'm not used to this morning timing yet, though, Dr. Bob. It's going to take me a few
right?
weeks.
But I think it's better.
It
I
is.
think they're like lots of people dropping off their kids at school. They're saying, how are kids doing in America? I want to tune in to Growing Up in America. So I think it's good.
And it's a great way to start your day, isn't it?
I got up so early this morning, Bree.
That doesn't even matter for you.
But it is a good way. It's a good way for us to start. It's a good way for you, Bree.
And for our listeners, really.
Yeah,
the best
exactly.
way.
So we have a great show today. We're going to have César Espinosa. He's the executive director of FIEL, which is a great grassroots immigration group here in Houston. We'll be talking a little bit about what's going on with immigration. And Bree, there is so much going on around immigration.
So much. I can hardly even keep up, and I think that's part of the point.
Well, one of the things we'll talk about is how traumatic it is for kids as they go to school, wondering, are we going to be rated in school? And then wondering, are my parents going to be home when I get home? Or will they have been deported? Or what's happening with grandpa, abuelo, and so forth? Yeah.
That family instability is just skyrocketing. And that fear, that trauma, ugh.
Yeah. We'll continue our discussion on immigration with one of our good friends, Sylvia Mintz. She's an immigration attorney and a longtime resident here in Houston. She has a great story and get her ideas on what's going on with immigration as well. Continuing, we'll be talking with Diana Del Pilar, who is the chief of school performance over at Children at Risk. We'll be talking a little bit about the walkout today at HISD, talking a little bit about the overall state of education in Texas. And we have the big Children at Risk school rankings coming out. Today in Dallas, they come out.
Yeah.
And then next week in Houston and the rest of the state.
I think the theme of 2025 is that there's always going to be 3 big things happening in any given day. Well, we are very excited for that Dallas ranking release.
Or more, yeah. And then Melissa Williams-Murphy, who's the founder of iWrite, and she's the director down at the Bryan Museum in Galveston. We'll be talking a little bit about literacy and children. Our number today is 5th, the ranking 5th. So you have an idea?
Oh, I think that most kids in 5th grade
are
passing math.
Huh. So I'm going to say that Houston ranks 5th in Texas in terms of, I'll go with math. That sounds good. So we'll see. Chris has been on a health kick last couple of times. So it could be that we're going to do something around health as well. So, and then do we have a segment today on,
a special segment?
Hip Speak?
We do.
Oh, wow. Good. I can't wait for Hip Speak.
We're kind of shifting the program a little bit to jazz it up, Smith.
So I'm looking forward to doing a little bit of Hip Speak as well. So that's our program today. Hey, coming up after the break, we're going to bring in César Espinosa, Executive Director of FIEL, talking a little bit about immigration here in the state of Texas and in Houston. We'll be right back here on Growing Up in America.
Me at the
All right, a little bit of Korean pop mixed with Bruno Mars there. So I was going to say it's appropriate. I don't know how appropriate it is as we slip into César.
I think it's just your favorite, Dr. Bob, and that's okay.
I just like it, yeah. So César Espinosa is with us. He's the executive director of FIEL. César, how are you doing, man?
We're doing good. Thank you so much for having us. We've been a little bit busy these last couple of days, but
wow.
And it seems like these days seem like they have been weeks, but we're hanging in there, starting the fight.
Yeah, absolutely. And continuing the fight, I mean, in many ways. And César, for those people that maybe have never heard of FIEL before, give us sort of the quick rundown. What do you guys do over at FIEL?
Well, FIEL started in 2007 as a dreamer organization, a group of undocumented youth that wanted to come together. And over the last 17 years, we've grown into the largest immigrant-led civil rights organization in the state of Texas. We work on different policies, education policies for undocumented youth, immigration policies at the local, federal, and state level for immigrants, and then we also do a lot of community work, just giving back to the community and empowering them as much as we can.
Cesar, over the last couple of weeks, there's been sort of this rash of work around immigration, executive orders signed, and some of the stuff we sort of were expecting. A lot of it, we didn't expect it this fast, this intensely. You and I both are doing a lot of interviews with the media, and I was on Univision recently talking about, how should parents be keeping their kids from school? And my message is that we really don't think, though you never know, but we really don't think schools are going to be raided and the kids should be going to school. What is the advice you're giving people, Cesar?
Well, we are telling people that they should send their kids to school, because what we're touching on is the fact that not sending your kids to school can actually get you in trouble. I mean, you can be sent to court for truancy and things like that, and we want to avoid that right now at all costs, just because we do not know. Now, we also do not know what policies or if they're going to come into schools, but it's for that reason that we are preparing educators and administrators and even kids themselves on how to react or respond if they have any encounters with ICE. So it's really important right now. Right now we are doing Know Your Rights trainings, sometimes 4 or 5 a day, to be in schools, to be in churches, to be wherever community gathers, so that they can get this information and disseminate it to their fellow, to their neighbors or to whoever they deal with.
Yeah.
That is one thing that I really love about your work, Cesar, is that you really just meet people where they're at and where they need to be, where they need this support. And so in this work, you guys are ramping up these efforts, it sounds like. How is the community being affected? What is going on with families? What are you seeing on the ground?
I mean, as always, I wish we had 3 or 4 hours to talk
I
about
know.
this, because there's so much going on. But unfortunately, we see a lot of what in to encapsulate everything. We see people being very afraid. One of the things that really touches me, and it's hard for me to talk about it because I have a 6-year-old, is little kids my son's age talking about this amongst themselves and saying, I'm scared, or mom is scared, and so I think that that's really disheartening. We're trying to provide resources for these children. We're trying to bring mental health experts on to put up material on how to talk to your children about this. But it really is heartbreaking. Now, in the larger grand scheme of things, we've seen Houston really. We've seen people not participating as much as in our economy as before. I talk about this, that in the last week when we've been out and about in the community, we also have to eat. So we stop at local restaurants, small mom and pop shops, and they've been empty. And that really worries us, because it's not only the immigrants that are going to suffer, or the workers, the immigrant workers that work at these places, but as these places are going to start shutting down, and it's going to hurt the Houston economy gravely if we don't put an end to this.
I was talking to someone, a superintendent yesterday. They talked about how truancy was higher than ever, which is, kids staying at home, and they're very worried that there's a sizable group of Latino children, right, that are just staying behind because they're just worried about this. To your point also about workers, I mean, in California, all the fires, without immigrant workers, they're not going to be able to rebuild like they want to do. And so we see the same thing here every time there's a weather event. The question I wanted to ask you, Cesar, is I had a meeting yesterday also with a lot of the larger nonprofits in Houston. I won't name them, but they were very worried about any work that they do in immigration, people coming after them. They're worried about a lot of the money that they get being withheld. In some cases, it's already been withheld. And then you and I have both seen places like Assumption in El Paso and Catholic Charities in the Valley that the state has come after them. I mean, what worries do you have for you guys over at Fiel and the work that you're doing in terms of how the state might react?
Well, the state already came after us. They
Yeah.
sued us last year for many of the same reasons that they sued Annunciation House and Catholic Charities. And we have been steadfast in fighting and trying to use the courts and trying to do what is right and continue to stand up to these to these attacks on our community. I mean, we have been very transparent, and we want to know that we want everybody to know that at the end of the day we're just educating and empowering our community, and the state seems to have a problem with that. But I think the fear is legitimate, but at the end of the day, uh, there has been fear in other parts of our history, and it's taken people with a lot of guts to stand up to that. And I think right now we need that more than ever, and we need solidarity within everybody to support one another. And if one of us falls, then the next one should be next in line to continue the fight.
I noticed in Miami yesterday that a group of Venezuelan leaders, community leaders, got very angry with the current administration because they said, hey, Venezolanos, we voted for Trump, and then now he's against us. And do you see the sort of a similar thing in Texas with the groups, the group of Latinos that did decide to vote for Trump? Are you seeing sort of the same reaction, or is it there yet?
Well, if it's not there yet, it will come when people when the economy starts hurting. I mean, and people are starting to notice. I mean, I don't know when's the last time you all bought eggs, but I just
Yeah.
went a couple of days ago, and it's 7.70 something a dozen. And I talk about this that before eggs were. They were the cheapest thing you could eat. So if you were strapped for cash, you would do that. And now it seems like it's a commodity. And so I think that when we start seeing these minor things that impact our community in big ways, then more people will say, oh, did we really make the right decision? And I think the answer will be no, you didn't make the right decision. The other thing we've seen around the country is people who actually voted and supported Trump, that they have family members that have been picked up, that they have wives, that they have, mothers and fathers being picked up, their family members. And now they're like, well, he said he was going to come after the criminals, but even his press secretary said last week that if you're here in the country illegally, you're a criminal.
Yeah.
So right now, the numbers that we have from ICE is that about 50% of the people that have been picked up are not necessarily people with criminal records, but people that had a history with immigration. Maybe they got an asylum denied, or they had an ankle monitor or something along those lines. And 50% of people that have been picked up have been people who have no prior history, no prior arrest record with ICE. And so those are the numbers that really worry us.
Wow.
It breaks my heart to hear. And then seeing that they're arresting like citizens and Native Americans and all these other people, I'm like, wait a second. So Cesar,
For the
um,
first time in 25 years, I've had to recommend that citizens get a passport card.
Wow.
And it boggled my mind to have to talk to people about that, but people were like, second generation, third generation Texans were, telling us we're afraid to get picked up. How can we defend ourselves? And I'm like, well, I don't want you carrying your passport around because it's bulky, and that's also really important, but you can always get a passport card and that'll prove your citizenship. But I never would have thought that those words would have come out of my mouth 10 years ago.
right. I'm really glad that you said that here on the air too. And in our final minute, I just want to ask you if you have one message for our policymakers or even just our everyday people about the realities of immigration, what is it?
Immigration is very difficult. We haven't changed our laws in over 30 years. And if we're not using the same cell phones we were using 30 years ago because technology and life has changed, then we can't use the same immigration policy that we used 30 years ago to face the current needs. And the biggest misconception that people have is that immigrants are just farm workers, that we're, and even though we do those jobs, we also have the largest medical center with a lot of immigrant doctors. We have a lot of paramedics. We have a lot of, firefighters in California. So at the end of the day, immigrants touch many parts of our lives.
Yeah. César Espinosa is the executive director of Fiel. And I know that many people here support KPFT, but if you want to support immigration, Fiel is a great place to go. César, thank you so much for the work that you guys are doing, and we'll stay in touch. And we need to continue to work together, Cesar, because these are trying times for the significant portion of our children and families in Houston and in Texas that are immigrant children or children of immigrants. So thank you very much, Cesar.
Thank you so much for having me.
All righty. We'll be right back here on Growing Up in America. Coming up next is immigration attorney Sylvia Mintz. I'm going to ask her story because it's a doozy. It's a good one you'll want to hear, and we'll talk a little bit more about this immigration conversation. You're listening to Growing Up in America on KPFT Pacifica Radio. All right, we're back on Growing Up in America. It's Bree Derry along with Dr. Bob. And we want to bring in Sylvia Mintz. Sylvia is an immigration attorney here in Houston. Sylvia, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And Sylvia, I remember, it must have been 15 years ago that you used to work with us at Children at Risk at our Public Policy and Law Center focusing on immigration things. And so thank you very much for joining us on the radio show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So give people a little bit of an idea of your background, Sylvia, because it's so motivating. It's such a great story. But in brief, your background, Sylvia.
Thank you. I came to the United States in 98, and I came to work as a maid. Then I worked as a nanny, and actually that's how I learned English, with the children's books from O for Orange and A for Apple. Working as a nanny, the lady gave me a catalog for Houston Community College. So I started attending Houston Community College while still working as a nanny. Because I had never had a formal training in English, I would study really hard, because I was afraid not to understand the lectures. And then I got all A's. I finished my associate degree at Houston Community College, and I got a scholarship to the University of St. Thomas, where I graduated magna cum laude with my political science degree.
Wow. Yeah.
Amazing.
I was still working as a nanny, and when I went to talk to the chair of the political science department, he to ask about the alternative teaching certificate, he asked me why I wanted to do that. And I said, well, I'm not going to work as a nanny now that I have my bachelor's degree. I want to do something else. Mm-hmm. And he asked me if I had ever considered being a lawyer. And for a minute, I thought he was joking. And I said, well, no. And he said, you have a great personality, and being a lawyer will be perfect for you. Wow. So I asked him what I needed to do, and he said, applying is easy. And I'm glad that he fooled me thinking that it was easy, because if not, I wouldn't have done it. I did apply. He gave me a letter of recommendation, and I got accepted into South Texas College of Law, where I graduated as a lawyer. And I've been practicing 17 years now, immigration law here in Houston. It has been an amazing experience, and Houston has been so welcoming to me.
And compare your experience, Sylvia, with what you see as some of the newer immigrants today and the stress that they're going through with them and their families in regards to everything that's happening. How did that compare to your experience?
I think that the immigrant experience is terrible, right? Because both political parties always use the immigrant community as piñatas to advance their interests. And the difference, I think, back then when I came is that the public opinion wasn't tainted. People understood that immigrants came here to work and to better their lives and their families' lives. But now, based on different rhetoric, political rhetoric, the public opinion is changing, right? Because there is the misconception that immigrants come here to commit crimes and to take from the United States community, which is not true, right? There are studies that show that the immigrant community, the undocumented community, commit way less crimes than people who are U.S. citizens born here.
Mm-hmm.
Sylvia, are you finding in this current climate that, for many people that have put off the idea of naturalization, getting their citizenship, that is that changing? Are people asking for to get their citizenship now, or was that happening before the President Trump was inaugurated?
No, it's changing. There is more interest. Of course, like Cesar said, there is a lot of fear in the community, even from people who are lawful permanent residents who are now finally considering and becoming U.S. citizens. And, what I think is there has always been in our community, in the undocumented community, we come to work and we come to raise our families and we kind of prioritize that. And sometimes we don't see the need of pursuing the citizenship once we are lawful permanent residents. But that's changing now because they are realizing that they might be vulnerable to be removed even if they are lawful permanent residents.
That makes me so sad to hear. There's a lot going on right now, as everyone has heard a couple times now, but we need to keep talking about it, I think. Sylvia, we are getting kind of close to the end of our segment, so I just want to take a moment to ask you, is there any key updates, messages, rights that you want to share for our listeners today to make sure they're informed of what's going on and have knowledge to empower their actions?
Yes, thank you. So the most important thing is that we need to share with everybody that they have constitutional rights, that if ICE comes to the door, they don't need to open the door unless ICE has a valid judicial warrant, which has the correct address, the correct place where they are going, and that is signed by a judge. If that's not the case, then immigration officers don't have the right to enter the property. That's very important. And then to make sure that they are prepared, that they have a plan in case they are detained by immigration, and to don't sign anything, especially if they don't understand, and hopefully to request a bond if they are detained by immigration, because many of the people who will be detained qualify to get a bond and to be released from immigration detention facilities to pursue an immigration relief.
I think the other thing, Sylvia, that's worth talking about very, very briefly as we wrap up is that, when people hear someone, I grew up in Puerto Rico, so people hear someone who speaks Spanish and they think, oh, they must be undocumented because they're not speaking English. That wouldn't be true in Puerto Rico because everyone speaks Spanish and many don't speak English, but they're still citizens. And I wonder if you can, for people that just make assumptions, whether it's in Houston and in Dallas or anywhere in Texas, what is the likelihood that when you talk to a Latino or when you talk to someone who's speaking a different language, that they are undocumented and that the police should go after them? I mean, or the ICE should go after them. I mean, what dispel that myth for us, Sylvia?
Of course, just because a person speaks Spanish doesn't mean that they are undocumented. And we have to remember that especially here in Texas, which used to be Mexico, there are a lot of first, second, third, fourth generation Americans who their main language is Spanish. And even though they are brown, or a different color and they speak different language, that doesn't mean that they are undocumented. And it's terrible that the police will really profile somebody just by the way they look or by the language they speak.
Very good. Sylvia Mintz is fighting the good fight. She's an immigration attorney here in Houston and fascinating background. Sylvia, thank you so much for being on the program. I hope you'll come on again.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. You're listening to Growing Up in America. Coming up, Data of the Day with Dr. Data. And we'll be right back with that. And here on Growing Up in America.
In a mirror, this guy
So I love a mix of Pink Pony Club going right into Star Trek. And you know who loves that too? Dr. Kulesa loves that, the Pink Pony Club mixing into Star Trek. Chris, how you doing?
Doing well. The First Contact suite. I'm very
Very good. Chris, did you happen to watch the Grammys this last week?
I did not, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
So this weekend I took my son to the auto show, and then I went to the State of the State address.
Oh, yeah,
Sunday.
you did.
Yeah. It's, I remember taking my daughter to the auto show. We would go, and this seems like an odd thing to do, but we would go, and I would say, especially as she became a teenager, she loved going with, and I would say, just pretend that you could get any car you want and walk around. And she really had fun at the auto show. So that's a great thing to do with your kids.
Cute.
It is. Yeah, growing up in Michigan, I had been going to the auto show since I was very little. The past 3 generations of my family all work for automotive companies. So it was a big tradition in my family to go to the trade auto show every year.
Wow.
So passing that along to my son and daughter. So.
Yeah. No reason to miss the Grammys, though. Bree, did you miss the Grammys?
I did, but I caught all the recaps on social media, and I've
Yeah.
been living for the gifs and the memes that came out of it.
So the Pink Pony Club, I mean, that was one of the big highlights, right? I mean, it was so
but
good.
Beyonce, come on.
Beyonce was
That
fantastic. Sabrina Carpenter was really good.
Mhm.
I mean, I think I love pop a little too much. I think that's part of
That's
the
okay.
problem.
There's nothing wrong with it, Dr.
Yeah.
Bob. This is a safe place. We listen and we don't judge.
Dr. Kulesa, our Dr. Data. What's our data piece today?
So today is 5th place.
Fifth?
And
It's 5th place. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, 5th place. And that is where Texas is right now in the Walgreens Flu Index. So that is an index that uses retail prescription data for antiviral medications to
Mhm.
treat influenza. And we are really getting hit hard with the flu right now, particularly among our children.
So this is a flu index in terms of who's getting the flu more often than others.
Right. And it's not really about severity itself, but
Yeah.
it's a comparison of where we're seeing a pretty notable amount of cases. And I mean, in Texas right now, we're seeing even some school districts that are seeing upwards of 10% of their student populations being out because of illness and the flu. It is getting really awful. With that being said, on a broader note, unfortunately, we're also seeing not as many kids get the flu vaccine this year.
Mm.
You know, as of the end of last year, we were seeing about a 6%. We were about 6% behind in where we usually are in terms of students getting the flu vaccine.
Wow.
And it's really getting rough out there, especially as, you know, there's more vaccine skepticism among parents, which really, you know, there isn't a lot of support behind being skeptical about the vaccines. Definitely parents should be getting the vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I feel like flu vaccine, like I grew up with that. That's the most trusted vaccine that I got every single year, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah.
So is it really just skepticism that's driving this? Is there anything else we can consider, Dr. Kulesa?
There's skepticism, but also too, you know, there's news stories that come out every year to say that, oh, well, the flu vaccine isn't as reliable as the years past or not as effective. And indeed, this year, there were some stories out that did say that there was a bit of a reduction in terms of the effectiveness of the flu vaccine. But that being said, we do see a pretty significant decrease among kids that got the vaccine and the number of kids that end up with severe illness. So there was actually a really interesting study that just came out by Sumner et al. In JAMA that reported that over 50%, the flu vaccine itself was over 50% effective against severe illness among U.S. children from 2015 to 2020. So while that effectiveness percentage might be out in headlines, it does not mean that it's not protecting your children.
Chris, I know you're not a medical doctor, right? You're a academic, PhD. And so I wonder, though, do you know, because most people get their flu vaccine in the fall, but now we're into February, but we're still seeing flu. Is this still a good time, from what you understand, to get, if you have not been vaccinated for the flu, should you still consider doing it?
I would definitely say so. In fact, I just had my daughter get the flu vaccine last Friday, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So I would definitely recommend it because the flu is still out there, right? It's still going to be circulating around the population for a while. Yes, it is a bit seasonal, but we still have quite a few weeks to go. And with the peak being right now, you still can have a pretty significant chance of getting it.
Do we have any early data, Chris, overall on vaccines and how we're doing in Texas with children's vaccination rates? And because we do see this heavy skepticism, and I'm wondering, what are we seeing?
So I don't have anything specifically for Texas. So as of late last year nationally, we had about 43% of kids get the flu vaccine. Or rather, I'm sorry, ended up getting 37%, where typically it would be around 43%, 45% at that time. So definitely seeing that decline.
Yeah. So, and it's probably getting into some of the other stuff as well. So it's, I worry, Chris, and, about vaccinations in general, right? That when they're not mandated, when you see large portions of kids who maybe they're fine with vaccines, but they just, because it's not mandated, they're not getting them before they go to school. And I'm so worried about a measles outbreak because it's so infectious, but that's probably a conversation we have with the next pediatrician we have, Bree. So yeah.
We'll put it on the books for later. Yeah.
Chris Kulesa is our own Dr. Data and big Star Trek fan. And thank you very much, Chris, for the work that you're doing. Chris is out at Rice University at the Baker Institute. He's a health scholar in residence. We'll talk to you soon, Chris.
Talk to you soon. Take care.
All right, take care. You're listening to Growing Up in America. Our next little segment, we're going to be doing a couple of words of hip speak. We'll be right back with hip speak here on Growing Up in America.
Feels like the walls are all closing in, and the devil's knocking at my door. Whoa, out of my mind, how many times did I tell you I'm no good at being alone? Yeah, it's taking a toll on me, trying my best to keep from tearing the skin off my bones. Don't you know how to run? I'm falling apart right in front of you. Can't you see? I lose control.
All right. Little peep from the peak at the Grammys. So
absolutely.
So, okay. Are you ready for hip speak? I'm not sure I'm ready.
Dr. Bob, I am so ready to fool you again. This is my favorite part of the week.
Okay, so let's do, before we get to Diana Del Pilar, who's standing and waiting for us, give us the number one. What's the one?
Chuggy.
Chuggy. You always, man.
I just love your reaction.
Okay, I'm gonna say that chuggy is, because these are all pure guesses, right? Mm-hmm. Chuggy is like something that's a little much. It's a little icky. It's a little chuggy.
Ooh, you're in the realm, I would say.
Okay, in the realm. Tell me what it really is.
It is someone or something that is uncool, unfashionable, or out of date. So, seeing that my pants are very baggy today, they are a little chuggy, knowing that skinny jeans are in style again.
Well, they're just coming in style. I think the baggy is still here, right? I mean,
it'll be here to stay with
most
me.
people miss the whole baggy era, which has been the last 2 years, right? They just stuck with the skinny. But see, you're still with it. So the peasant blouse is that in style or not?
Oh, this feels very early 2000s. So that would fall distinctly into chuggy
I am
category.
not going to judge anyone's fashion sense, believe me. So, but I get that there are times when we see some of our colleagues that are dressing a little chuggy. I don't know if that's a good, correct use of the word, though.
I think you did great there, yes.
Okay, very good. Okay, give me another one. Chuggy. Chuggy is sort of a fun word, though, right?
I really enjoy saying it. That's why I picked it as number one today.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Give me another one.
All right, gas. This one you should be able to get, I think.
So, use it in a sentence. That might help me. Like, is it a gas? No, that's not it. It's like, a gas is like someone who's like faking you out, maybe? That's gaslight. Tell me about gas.
So I would say a good sentence is that our coordinator today, Alicia, her outfit is gas.
Oh, on fleek, right? I mean, so it's really on fleek, to use a word that is like 10 years old now. So, which a lot of our listeners still don't know about. But I'm just, gas is like sort of fire, right? Mm-hmm. Right? Really doing really well, right?
Yeah.
We love that. Okay.
Very trendy. So we go from chuggy, which is not trendy, to gas, which is very trendy.
Okay, give me one more.
All right. So understood the assignment.
Very good. I think I can get this one. Understood the assignment. This is someone who is like doing well. They did exactly what needed to be done. They understood the assignment.
Absolutely. It's usually in reference to celebrities, people who like their appearance, like, ooh, they understood the assignment. But it can also be something as simple as Rico today understood the assignment with our intro music for Dr. Data.
Yeah, he understood the assignment.
He killed
very
it.
good. Okay, very good. So a little bit of hip speak. So what I like is that our listeners are just a tad more hip now because of you, Bree.
And you, Dr. Bob.
We'll be right back. And coming up, we're going to talk about the state of Texas education with Diana Del Pilar. She's the chief of school performance over at Children at Risk. And we're going to start talking about this walkout that's going on in HISD. We'll be right back here on Growing Up in America.
Maria, Maria, she remind me of a West Side Story. Growing up in Spanish Harlem. She living the life.
All right. Do you know that song?
Was that The Weeknd?
Is that The Weeknd? Do we know Rico? No, it's not. Who is
Oh.
that? Yeah, we were just Santana remix.
I was like, this sounds so familiar, but I can't put a finger on it.
Yeah. Did you know that, Alicia? Oh, see, Alicia, she's not on the microphone, but she knew it because she's just a little bit, gas. She's got to go
a little
on.
more hip than me.
She understands the assignment a little bit more than I do. So,
yeah.
And she's not chuggy like me. So I'm just trying to use it all. I'm just trying to use it all right now. Diana Del Pilar is with us. She is the chief of school performance out at Children at Risk and knower of all things education. Diana has a great experience as a school leader. And Diana, ¿cómo estás hoy? How you doing today? Diana, are you there?
Buenos dias. I'm outstanding. Happy to be here.
Very good. Hey, first off, I don't know if you know much about the school walkout in HISD, Diana. Do you know what that's all about? Because I think I heard estimates that of the 190,000 kids in HISD, about 3,000 to 4,000 of them walked out today.
Yeah, they are definitely drawing a lot of attention.
Yeah.
I do. So the Community Voices for Public Education, which is a grassroots organization led by, for the most part, parents, right? Parents and a few educators, a couple of university students that are working on advocacy and policy graduate degrees are very active and vocal around creating innovative ways to rattle people's chains, so to speak.
And I think it's
their voices heard in ways.
And it's twofold, right? I mean, part of it is immigration, right? Sort of the discussion on immigration. But another part of it is just sort of a general strike against Mike Miles.
That would be the majority of it. I was actually able to hear the discussion around the rationale. The majority of it is wanting the superintendent removed and the appointed school board removed so that it's a board that reflects parent voice and a superintendent that is there and elected by the board decision.
Yeah.
So that's the priority, protecting the students so that they have a free and public education and a safe place to be at all times without fear of having an ICE agent come in or a supporting agency come in and make an arrest on campus of a family member or a student. And for all those means, it could be, a staff member for all we know. There's definitely a desire to protect and preserve the best interest of the student per the view of the parent, right? This is all about parent voice, parent perspective. And just be honest, it's not the whole perspective, but it is the parent lens, which we understand and can empathize with their voice.
And it's important to consider all sides in this issue. It's a very complex problem right now within HISD, I think, because on one hand, you have the community who wants to have their voice reflected and have their leadership actually follow what they're looking for. But then you also have kids who need to learn and need to be in school. And then you have all this other legal, political stuff happening that just makes this ecosystem very, very chaotic and turbulent, right?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it.
Absolutely. I think it's important that we keep all kids in mind, right? Having all students in mind. And it's hard when you're a parent because your priority is your student, your child.
Mm-hmm.
Deanna, I wanted to ask you about the school rankings today. They come out, the children at risk school rankings. You know, the state has not put out rankings for the last 2 years. Children at Risk did one last year. This is this year's, which it's released in Dallas today. Next week there'll be a press conference at one of the schools in Houston, talking about the Houston rankings, and then subsequently the same day the state rankings. I know that you've had a sneak peek. Any overall, without naming schools, any overall trends for you that sort of are standing out as we begin to talk about how our schools are doing in the state?
I think there are definitely some trends. We see more engagement in diverse pathways to college and career readiness. We see improvement in reading in elementary school. We see some small gains in mathematics from elementary to high, but we're still struggling in that area. So overall, we have more schools that are achieving goal-driven status. So we're doing better by students that are economically disadvantaged. But let's be honest, right? We're definitely not where we need to be. We still have math that is performing significantly lower than we were before the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
The good news is that our reading performance as a state across all grade levels is better. We're up in reading language arts. And a matter of fact, we're actually better off in a better performance than we were pre-pandemic. So that's pretty exciting stuff. We got to get on point with math.
Yeah.
After all, we're in a place and time where STEM fields, engineering, science, technology are in high demand, and you will not get the jobs if we won't have the pipeline if we don't produce students that have mathematics and science under their belt.
Yeah. I know that the big discussion across the state today around public education, we've talked a lot about immigration, which is a big discussion, certainly in our schools. But outside of our schools, it's about vouchers and these education savings accounts, and which are just a nice way of saying vouchers. And what is your take? I mean, the Senate bill was released. And there's some distressing things in there. I was on a local TV station talking about it, sort of the good, the bad, and the ugly, but there's a whole lot of ugly in this voucher bill, Diana.
There is a whole lot of ugly. I've been asked, is the Senate bill for vouchers going to benefit students? And it depends on which students we're talking about, right? 20% of the funding is allocated for students that are already in private school. So hands down, those students will benefit from having, kind of like a scholarship, right?
Their parents will benefit financially. Their parents will benefit financially. That's for sure.
We do know.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. With the large majority of students, like the remaining 80,000 eligible students, it's about 100,000 seats. The remaining 80,000 seats would be for students whose families can earn up to $150,000 for a family of four. So when we think about logistically, if you live in a community where there's a high density of poverty compared to a community where there's middle class, upper middle class families and the proximity to a private school, a parochial school, you're looking at, sometimes a 20-mile distance, right, for accessing one of those types of campuses. We're also talking about an average tuition of, I believe it's about $35,000 for tuition alone. We're not talking uniforms and enrichment programs and any other fees that the schools may have. So how many families that truly live what we consider in the poverty level, or even up to 150% of the poverty level, would be able to afford the remaining balance, right? Because the vouchers are about $10,000 per student. And so if average tuition is $35,000, will families be able to make the difference up, so to speak? And what does that do to schools, right? So if you have, we'll say these 80,000 students are no longer enrolled in public schools. Yeah. That means $80,000 students worth of dollars will not be funneled into those campuses or those districts as well.
Right.
So it makes a smaller budget to educate the remaining students that are in those schools.
Yeah. I feel like this voucher conversation, I mean, obviously it's early in the process, Bree. So there's going to be a lot of changes to the bills, but it's probably something we need to keep our eyes on. I mean, I thought and we don't have a lot of time now, Diana, but I thought the other ugly part of this was that the state was defining as low income any family of four making less than 160,000. It's like the only place where you're defining low income is 160,000 in the state. I mean, indeed, I get how if you're making, that amount of money, there may be some struggles, but not like the struggles you would have at 60,000, right?
Mhm.
And yet we still are continuing to challenge our families that are below 60,000. And so it's just an interesting thing. Diana Del Pilar is the Chief of School Performance at Children at Risk and our expert on things education. Thank you, Diana, very, very much, and keep up the great work. All righty. Very
Absolutely,
good.
my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All righty. Take
Great
care.
to chat with you.
Next up, we're going to be talking with Melissa Williams Murphy. She's the founder of iWrite, and she's the director down at the Bryan Museum in Galveston. We'll be talking a little bit about literacy and writing and reading. We'll be right back here on Growing Up in America.
If you don't wanna see me dancing with somebody.
We're back on Growing Up in America. It's Bree and Dr. Bob, and Melissa Williams Murphy is with us. She's the founder of iWrite. She's also the director down at the Bryan Museum. Melissa, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Very, very good. So tell us about iWrite, right? That's the sort of, to me, seems very, very, I want to know about the Bryan Museum as well, because it seems like a super cool place, Texas history and so forth. But tell us about iWrite.
Of course. So iWrite is a literacy nonprofit. We've been around for 15 years. I started it after I had gone on a couple school book tours all over Texas
Hmm.
back in like 2008, 2009. And so I've published 12 books, written 12 books. I've written literacy curriculum. My background is psychology and counseling. So really, I started merging character development and teaching kids through characters. And that was kind of my thing in the schools, while encouraging them to write their own stories and to do things positively in the community. And whenever I would go in and do my writing presentations during these school book tours, I'd always hear kids ask the same question. And that was, well, can kids be authors too?
Hmm.
And, back then, I mean, self-publishing was just starting to,
Yeah.
come on the scene. And I had a small publishing company, and I thought, you know what? Sure. All you need is to be published, and we have the mechanism to do that. So in
Wow.
2009, I launched the iWrite Short Stories by Kids for Kids publishing contest, and then soon after established officially the iWrite nonprofit. But back then it was under a different name called Read 30 to encourage these kids to read. But then as the whole contest kind of took over the nonprofit's mission, it was really more about you can be a writer too, but start as a reader.
Yeah.
So it kind of morphed into what it is today. And since then, I mean, we've published thousands of kids all over the world. The contest eventually became international back in 2018. Most of our kids, though, do come from Texas and, of course, the greater Houston area, us being located in Houston. But we've done some phenomenal things with our published kid authors, including in 2022, we broke the Guinness World Record for the largest published book in the world called
Wow.
I Am Texas. Yes.
Yes, yes.
Wow. Wow. Tell me in general, Melissa, are kids writing more or less than maybe they were 20 years ago? Because it seems like it's something that kids can super get behind.
Yes. And, there's almost two answers to that question. I find that, of course, we all know with technology, they are writing less. But I think the more concerning piece that I have had to tackle is the ones that are writing and that are interested, the writing is not nearly as good as it was 15 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And
Interesting.
yeah, and so that's where we're really trying to make sure that we first tackle the psychology of being a writer, because that's number one most important. Yes, I can be a writer. Yes, writing is fun. It's not just something you get tested on in school. It will benefit you for the rest of your life. It will increase your ability to be able to communicate well. So that's, the first piece in all of that. And then you're really starting to tackle the technique and the creativity and the thinking outside the box. So there's two pieces to it, but that's always been the thing where, I remember 15 years ago, I was seeing, many more pieces that were so well written. And now when we see a really well written piece, we're like, oh my gosh, this is a diamond in the rough,
Oh,
right?
wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is definitely a change for sure.
That's just fascinating. I want to ask you why that trend might be happening. Do you have any insight there? I do have a backup question in case you're not comfortable with that one.
Well, I do believe, and this is something, that kind of is the foundation of I Write, as we've played around with the way, technology has come into play. But I really do believe that the overusage of screens by young children, and that's, number one. That really is
That's what I was
one of the
thinking.
reasons
Yeah.
why we're seeing it.
Yeah.
Well, and kids went from reading for hours and hours a day to scrolling for hours and hours a day and consuming bite-sized information, So
I
that
know.
makes complete and
Yes.
total sense.
Yeah.
Yes.
One question I had, Melissa, is that, I love how your premise of, readers become writers. And what happens when some of the more interesting books, interesting for a variety of reasons, are banned, right? But books that maybe kids could get interested in, books that are maybe a little bit off the beaten track, so that makes them banned. What happens when books are banned, and how does that impact sort of the interest in reading for kids and the interest subsequently in writing?
Well, yeah, it's the psychology behind it. Now I'm not allowed to read something. I think that it's all also you have to factor in when it comes to book bans. The parental structure, the values of the home, whatever it is that you have decided in your home that this is the way we engage, and this is how we bring this information, to our children at this age. The parents need to just be parents, first of all. They've made the decision for their kids,
Yeah.
and that's, where it starts. But we all know that if you take something away from a child whose, prefrontal cortex is still developing, and they're going to want the thing that you told them not to have. Now, if we haven't explained to them why we're not ready for them to read about this, then now we've created a problem. You really have to have that open communication and decide when is the appropriate time for a developing mind who may not see something the same way as an adult. When are they ready to read certain things? Because I think that's the issue right now.
Yeah.
Is everything is available to kids. And it is our job as parents to decide when they're ready for certain aspects of awareness on a certain topic, and you're not ready for it at certain ages.
Right.
So
I want to go into our fun 5 questions here at the end of the program, Melissa, which we love asking. And I'll start with one that might be a good one for you. When you were a kid, what was your favorite book that you would read?
Oh, I loved Mr. Popper's Penguins and Where the Red Fern Grows. I remember diving into chapter books, in third grade. That was a really big time for developing that love for story and the emotional roller coaster that you go on with your character.
Wow. Were you considered a bookworm when you were a kid?
I was considered, no, actually.
Ah.
That was just a part of life.
Yeah.
You go to the library every week, you have your pile of books. That was just what you do. It wasn't like now you're a bookworm.
Yeah.
that's, I feel like,
Well,
the difference between today, you know?
I feel though that when I was a kid, I was absolutely labeled a bookworm because the librarians loved me because they knew that I was reading all the books. And so when I would get like
Yes.
an extra book, you were allotted 2, 3, or 5, and I would always get more. And they would say, "Oh, that's okay, Bobby. We know you're going to bring them back. We know you're reading them." And I remember even in college that I would go to this local library and during the summer, and I would want to check out reference books, and they're like, "Yeah, we see you so often. Go ahead, it's fine." So I was absolutely a bookworm.
Yes.
So do you have a fast 5 for Melissa?
I
3?
do. So popping a little bit more to pop culture here. I am obsessed with all the Grammy talk, of course. So Melissa, did you watch the Grammys?
Yeah, I did.
There you go. Look at that.
So
She's a little cool there. So yeah,
very, very hip.
yeah.
So I wanted to ask, what was your highlight moment or your star moment or most memorable of the night? Just one thing.
Every year for the Grammys, you always see kind of like a theme,
Mhm.
and it was interesting. I mean, I enjoyed all of the entertainment, but I also saw a little bit of like a dark theme in some of the performances. And so I always sit with what happens at the Grammys, and I kind of sit with it for a while to understand like why that performance was done that way. So it was The Weeknd. Their performance was very dark to me,
Yeah.
and I was just kind of scratched my head afterwards.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that stood out to me the most. And then, of course, I think it was interesting that they had to remind us how many times the team that decides and how many people are on that team. I found that curious how many times they reminded us of the 13,000 people that make the decisions. I don't remember them ever having to do that before this.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming there's been a lot of question going on. So I look at it from a psychological standpoint. It's like I'm almost not even there for the entertainment. I'm there for what's going on right now.
Wow. Wow. Very good.
Yeah.
Melissa Williams Murphy is the founder of I Write and executive director of the Bryan Museum down in Galveston. Melissa, thanks so much. We need to have you back on. I would love to have one of those kids that has won a prize for writing a story. I'd love to interview them at some point, maybe during the summer or during a time off. So we don't interrupt school. So let's work on that. Melissa, thank you so much.
Superstars.
Exactly. Yes. Keep up the great work. We'll talk to you soon. And that's it for Bree and I. We will see you soon on next week here on Growing Up in America on KPFT Pacifica Radio.
With a dream, my cardigan. Welcome to the land of fame excess. Am I gonna fit in? Jumped in the cab, here I am for the first time. Look to my right and I see the Hollywood